Hello, I'm Lanness Robinson, Director of Athletics of Hillsborough County Public Schools, and you are watching the Tampa Bay Community Network.
Well, hello there, Tampa Bay, and welcome to the Tampa Bay Community Network Sports Talk. I'm your host, Coach Chuck White, and my guest is Mr. Lanness Robinson. He's the Director of Athletics for Hillsborough County Public Schools, and he's had this job for 8 years. But prior to this job, he's still been in the county, and he's been doing some coaching and has served also at a school as the athletic director. We're going to talk about all that and more, but at first, I'd like to say, Mr. Robinson, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Coach, for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure having a person of your caliber here, and I'm sure guests, our audience, going to get much from you because you've been our guest once before, but I know you're going to have a lot of other things to talk about because so much has been transpiring through the school. Why don't you talk about some of the places you've been prior to coming into the Hillsborough County Athletic Director?
Okay, Coach. Well, I came to the county in about 20 years ago, and I was a social studies teacher, a head boys basketball coach, and an assistant football coach out at Plant City High School. Then I left there and went into administration, and I was at Wharton High School 1 year as an assistant principal in student affairs, and then 5 years as the director of athletics, the assistant principal for administration at Wharton before I became the director of athletics.
Now, what does this job entail, as the director of athletics? Many people want to know, why do we need an athletic director, or what are his duties?
Okay, well, I oversee a few schools, 27 high schools and 46 middle schools, and I'm responsible for the operations of all of the athletic program, which includes transportation, officials, uniforms, equipment, supplies, and some personnel. So officials, all of those things go into the operational side, making sure that on Friday nights we have the lights, be able to have football and every other contest that we have for all the rest of our sports throughout the school year.
I guess that answers a lot of questions that people want to know, why do we need, but look like you got so much to do. You must have a supporting force. Who do you have to support you? Maybe your office. Want to talk about that?
Absolutely. My office is comprised of 4 people, but more importantly than just my office, we have people at the schools that are, they're the real glue to making it all work. We have assistant principal for administrations at each of the schools that serve as athletic directors. They have the APA secretary, which helps oversee all of the process and procedures for athletics. But then there are the business managers, the bookkeepers, and such at the schools. But inside of my office, there's an assistant director. She helps oversee, that's Jennifer Burchell. She helps oversee our middle school program, as well as deals with all of our officials and scheduling. Then we have an accountant, Terry Jefferson. She's been there a long time. She keeps me out of jail, make sure that we don't spend that money improperly. And then the glue to our office is Belinda Nesmith. She's the executive secretary. She's the nicest person if anyone calls, but she's very knowledgeable in making sure that we stay on task and handle all the business that we need.
I called your office several times, and boy, they are so courteous and so patient with you. And you said it right. They really do a wonderful job there. Now, I know if you go to school, just because you enroll at school, you just can't walk out there and want to play sports, football, basketball, track, or whatever. You have to meet some requirements. And they call it eligibility. Correct. Now, you have to be eligible to play or participate in these sports, and maybe it's age, maybe it's length of time. Talk about the eligibility of a player. If somebody's son or daughter wants to participate in a sport.
Well, obviously the FHSAA, the Florida High School Athletic Association, we as member schools, we agree to adhere to all the rules, which includes age limitations, residency rules, GPA requirements, which is actually a state law, and then lots of other rules. The one rule that's probably gotten the most attention over the last couple of years is our transfer rule.
Oh, yeah.
The transfer rule has changed the scene, I would say, in high school athletics, especially here in Hillsborough County. Transferring was a little bit out of control. We had too many students changing schools. So we took the stance that we want to verify all of the information for student athletes prior to them participating. So just because someone changes schools doesn't mean that they will be able to play sports. They have to go through a verification process. So it has definitely changed some thoughts on transferring and trying to find the grass that happens to be a little greener.
I know that word transfer sometimes was synonymous with recruiting. And they say if a school was not winning but had some top players there, they can easily influence those guys to leave a school that's not winning to come to a winning school and make them stronger. I can't say what happened here or there, but I do know that the county, and you had a part to play in that, I think, a lead role to come up with a committee called the Eligibility Committee. Am I correct in saying that? Talk about that.
Well, we created a transfer policy. It was about 2.5 years ago that we actually got it passed. Mm-hmm. And once we had that, the process includes a committee, like you mentioned. It's actually called the Transferring Student Athlete Participation Committee. So we have an acronym for it called the TSAP. And we review every transfer. It doesn't matter if the person is moving from one school to the next, or if they're moving from out of state or out of the country. If they have enrolled in the high school previous to this, their current enrollment, then they have to go through this verification process. I can tell you in that 2.5 years that you mentioned about lots of rumors and such.
Yes.
You don't really hear that anymore, and it's a direct result of the transfer policy.
Wonderful. I think it's unfair to a school and definitely to a coach to get star pupil in there and he works so hard to train him, then some unfair person talk this guy and they come in, their parents to move or say they move and they don't move and all. And I was glad to see that you did have this committee, and as you say, regardless of why he's transferring, you still have to investigate it, and they have to be approved to move if they're going to move.
Coach, let me give you one stat.
Go ahead.
In the last 2.5 years, we've reviewed about 1,600 cases.
Okay. Once the kid has been approved to play, there are still some stipulations or some requirements that a player has to meet. Okay, you want to talk about that?
Absolutely. Those things that I already mentioned, you know, age requirements, residency, they can't play more than 4 years of high school athletics, the GPA requirement, those are standard. But then beyond that, we have some necessary paperwork, some insurance requirements, all those types of things, a physical, just so that, you know, they cover, everyone's protected liability-wise, including the student athlete and their family, but as well as the school district, the Florida High School Athletic Association, everyone involved is, and every I must be dotted and every T must be crossed.
You know, there have been some unfortunate situations where kids have fallen out on football fields and been not only just falling out, they have just checked out of life. They died, you know, from these activities and the overheating and whatever have you. Now, how do you protect against that? Is there any kind of specification the school or the coaches have to be required to do?
Well, we require basic CPR and AED training for all of our coaches prior to them coaching. But in addition to that, obviously, the biggest key in any type of heat-related or concussion or any of these serious medical issues is education. One, everyone has to be aware that that issue is a potential issue, and then two, be educated on how to deal with them. So in case something does happen, most times the more serious injury can be prevented by preparation and education.
Who are coaching these kids? Are they someone who just felt like he played football and wants to go out and be a football coach, or he played basketball and he wants to be a basketball coach, or baseball, or track, golf, or whatever? Who are coaching them? Are they certified, or do they have to meet some specifications?
Okay, well, obviously, they have to have an interest in order to be out there.
Yes.
But that doesn't make you a coach.
Right.
That makes you interested. So beyond that, all the coaches that are paid have to be certified by the Department of Education. So they've gone through some type of process, some type of review process to be certified. Volunteers are just that. They're volunteers. As long as they pass background screening, they can volunteer. But the paid coaches, the ones that are compensated to do so, they have to have an additional certification.
It was once said that every head coach had to be a member of the faculty or be on that campus, you know, and then yet there are coaches who come from other schools. How do you handle that with a coach being a faculty member at School A, but he can come to Coach B and serve as a coach? Maybe not a head coach, but other coach. Are there any stipulations there? Do you frown on that or what?
No, obviously the principals do all the hiring. So let me start off that I don't really get involved in personnel decisions. However, the principal will prefer to have the person on campus.
Yes.
But the day and times of all the coaches being on campus, those days are gone.
Right.
So understanding that, now they're looking for the best candidates, whether they're on campus or off. Still with the preference of them being on campus every day, but the reality is in our world, the number of off-campus coaches continually increase. So with that being said, we make sure that they have the certifications and such, no matter where if they're on another campus or if they're completely off campus, they still have to have that same DOE coaching certification or a certification from the DOE to be a classroom teacher.
Back in the day, and I might date myself here, few years ago, I'll say a few years ago, but there was a long time ago, in order to coach, you had to come out of college with either physical education certificates or certifications, major, or recreation or something involving with sports. And if you didn't have that, then they wouldn't involve you with the coaching. They would get somebody. They had so much PE majors because they were teaching PE in so many different schools. And many times, if you weren't a PE major at that particular school where the varsity sport was being participated, maybe you came from, they were junior highs then rather than middle schools.
Correct.
And elementary schools. So you had to be in physical education, varsity, something close to sports activity. You had to be involved with that, recreation of sports or whatever. But now, as you say, they don't teach, they don't have these large physical education programs where they have a lot of PE coaches and whatever have you, and they could keep them right at the school or next door to the junior high, the middle school. So they get the next available person, am I correct?
Best available.
Best available, I like that word, best.
And just as an example, when I first got into teaching, when I was at Plant City High School, there were, I think, 9 PE teachers. Currently, there's probably 4 or 5 at Plant City High School. So it's just a different day and time. Changes in the system and in society just kind of mandate different things. So that's kind of where we are at this point.
Many times, coaches are right in the same high school or way, and they have a schedule do they have allotment time? Say if he's on the same campus where his players are, do they allot time for him to prepare for his coaching practices during that day? He just have to do it after school assignments?
Let me be clear. They're teachers.
Yeah.
They're teachers
first. Yeah.
So the requirements for being a teacher are quite demanding.
Yes.
They have to complete those.
Yes.
So if they agree to be a coach in addition to, that's going to be after they're completed their requirements. There is no free time during the day for them to do that. So to be really clear on that, that preparation and such is going to be on their own time. That's going to be outside of the school day. Several years ago, we went from teachers teaching 5 out of 7 classes to 6 out of 7 classes. That means that they only have one 50-minute period to really prepare for their classes on the following days. So, no, coaches put in a lot of time after school.
Yes. They used to have a 7th period physical education, a PE period, and all the athletes would be assigned to that. And during football season, some of the coaches would be running their plays out there and doing basketball. They've been doing, and they investigated that was a farce.
That was a long time ago.
Yes, a few years, as I said,
a few years ago.
Yeah, a few years ago. Well, we got this thing just about where we need to have it now. We got the right people doing the teaching, the right people doing the coaching and refereeing. Now, what about referees? I mean, where do they come from? In the county, out of the county? They hired by the county, the school, or the coaches can select a scratch one? Talk about the referees.
Okay, our officials, and I often say, we don't leave the good referees at home and bring the bad ones, right?
Yeah.
Our referees decide to go into officiating. By doing that, and I thank them all the time. Every time I get an opportunity to talk to a group of officials, I thank them for what they do, because without the officials, we can't have contests. Now, I can tell you this, the numbers that we would like to have across the board to officiate aren't where we want them. We need officials.
Yes.
We need officials. As the number of schools continue to increase, the number of contests continue to increase, we need officials.
Yes.
With all that being said, we contract, we being the school district, we contract with the officials associations. Officials decide to join the officials associations that we have in all of our different sports. The officials are actually independent contractors. They join an association, but they really are independent contractors. Understanding that we have an agreement with the association to pay certain rates for game fees and for travel. And then we also pay some fees for booking so that they make sure that they have officials scheduled and assigned. But the officials are regular community folks. Some of them are educators, some of them are businessmen, and some of them just are, people that have a love for the game. So they come from a lot of different walks of life.
I served as a game official for 15 years plus. And I talked with Clem Brooks, whom I have a lot of respect, for whom I should say I have a lot of respect. And because of the number of years he put in as an official, he became president of the West Coast Game Official Association. And I think he still works with the Buccaneers doing in an official capacity. But he refereed football, he refereed basketball, and baseball.
And softball.
And softball, yes. He's been around. Came from the military, as he told the story, how he became a referee because they got him doing that in the military. He went down to Miami and did it for so long. The reason I have so much respect for him, he stayed in there for so long. I told him, I said, Clem, when I was officiating, you had 2 guys to officiate basketball. And that was a job you run down back and forth. And now they have 3. I said, if I had known you guys were going to 3, I may have stayed around.
You could still be going, huh?
Yeah, I might still be going, but I just enjoyed it. But it's a no thank you job. It's a thankless type job. You hear people, if they know your name, they holler out of the stand, you guys get this right, and blah, blah, blah. And some guys can't take that, so they don't need to be officiating. So they say you can't have rabbit ears because, you know, sometimes I'm sitting home and I see in baseball, a guy say, he's out. Oh, man, that guy was safe. But then they put the replay on it. And the same thing in football. They put that replay on it. Then you see it, you say, wow. So you got to respect these officials, and you need officials. And those of you who are listening in, check with the West Coast Official Association, because I think you have to be just about 18 years.
But there are other associations as well. West Coast only takes care of football and basketball.
Yes.
But we need officials in softball, baseball, volleyball, wrestling, soccer. We definitely need more officials. So anyone interested in being an official can always contact the Hillsborough County Public Schools Athletics Department, and we can get you in touch with the right group.
Well, I'm going to call Billy Reed and Harry Mars and all those guys who used to officiate during my time and see if they want to go back out there and do it. But all seriousness, those of you who are listening in and viewing, go out and get contacted with these people. It's a lot of fruitful things happen through officiating. You serving the community to where athletes are, and they remember you later on in the years, and you doing a great service for kids, well needed. Why don't we talk about scheduling? Scheduling is a thing that we look at sometime and we wonder why certain teams get such a tough road to hoe, meaning why every year seemingly they have to play so many top and tough teams, or why they're in a conference with certain people and they should be in this conference, should be in that conference. How do you come about having these people being recognized in 6A or what classification they are in the scheduling?
Okay, well, first off, that's done by the Florida High School Athletic Association.
Okay.
And it's based on two things. It's based on school enrollment, so the number of students at the school, and geography. So those two factors go into it. Now, beyond that, the part that I take care of in my office are the non-district games, because they're put in their districts by the Florida High School Athletic Association. The non-district games we take care of in our office, and we look at things such as travel, distances. We have a large county. We have schools as far as 50 miles apart from one another.
Wow.
So we look at travel, we look at traffic patterns, we try to consider rivalries and proximity and such. But then in one sport in particular, football, literally we take the previous 2-year cycle and look at the number of wins they've had, and we pair them up. We pair up the teams that have a lot of wins. They play other teams that have had a lot of wins. So the best are playing the best. Then conversely, the teams that didn't have very much success, they're going to play other teams that didn't have very much success, so that we try to level the playing field, so that, you know, we want the games to be good games, but we also want there to be some fairness and equity in that scheduling process.
Pay to play a sport. I couldn't get used to that. You got to pay to play a sport. That once exists, or does it still exist?
Now, when you talk about pay for play, there's a couple different models to talk about. We have an insurance premium that we require of everyone. So it's nominal when you think about the cost of playing sports, but at the same time, it's a requirement for everyone. Now, we started 2 years ago a pilot program in a particular sport, lacrosse, and it is truly a pay for play. They cover all the costs for the sport. Now, if you think about that, if we had a true pay for play model in a sport such as football or basketball or baseball, or the pay for play cost would be really, really high. Lacrosse, the individual students are paying everything because the school district is not paying anything, but it's a pilot. program, meaning we're just trying it out for a couple of years to see how it goes. But in the other sports, it's just the insurance cost. So I try to keep those costs down as low as possible. And that really is just to ensure that everyone has a liability coverage at all times.
Who controls the prices of a ticket at a game? Is it the school, the county, or the
School
state?
board.
School board.
Yes, sir.
Now, are the games the same when they have tournaments, or
Yes.
it goes up?
When you say tournaments, if
Yeah.
it's like let's say in basketball they have these winter tournaments
Yes.
during the winter break, that 2-week winter break, then the school runs that individually. Or a wrestling tournament, they run those individually. Some of these big track meets, they run individually. But the Florida High School Athletic Association playoff tournaments, those prices are set by the FHSAA. So it kind of depends on which event you're talking about.
I know for one thing, in college, which you have no control of, if they call it a classic or something, they can charge a high fee and whatever have you. So I was wondering in high school if they had a tournament, could they?
No, we have regular season costs and then playoff costs.
Okay.
So once we get into the district, regional, and state competition, the prices change, but those are FHSAA games. Otherwise, everything is considered regular season, and those costs are consistent.
They have what they call a national signing day, and especially for football, it takes a lot of recognition. What can you say about the National Signing Day?
I mean, it's a great honor for kids to be able to sign their name on the dotted line and know that they're going to have their education paid for at the next level. It's a tedious process, especially for the higher profile people. We had the #1 overall recruit here locally this year. We've had the #3 overall recruit. We have the #2 recruit next year. So I mean, we have some high-profile kids playing in our schools. However, it's really a interesting process because the kids have to make a very life-changing decision at such a young age. However, it's an honor to be able to do so because not everyone gets that opportunity. A lot of national and local media coverage for all those kids, but it's definitely. But I don't want it to be lost in this conversation that, you know, National Signing Day is not just football. National Signing Day happens in all sports at different times throughout the year. So that's really important to say. But also, National Signing Day is primarily for Division I and Division II athletes. There are other levels that people can play at and eventually get scholarships.
Explain the difference in Division I and Division II.
Okay, Division I obviously are the larger schools, the ones that you see play on TV every week.
Yes.
You know, in the state of Florida, you would think of Florida State. I have to say them first because I'm a Florida State grad. Florida.
Florida State grad.
Absolutely.
Like that.
Florida, USF, Miami, UCF. Those are the Division I's. And then some of the Division II are some of the smaller schools that still play. And then there are the Division III, and then there's the division called NAIA. So there are multiple levels, and within those levels, lots of different opportunities for kids to further their education.
I'm sure those of you who are viewing and listening in, you got much from this program because that was our intent, to make sure you understand what goes on in the high school and how it's operated by one of the best, Lanness Robinson. So, Mr. Robinson, so nice to have you. Thanks for being on the show. Thank those of you for listening. So be with us again on our next show right here at the Tampa Bay Community Network Sports Talk.